You're listening to the Inspired Mom MDs podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Cindy Van Prague. I help physician moms take back control of their time and energy so they can prioritize what matters most and thrive at work and home. In each episode, I bring honest conversations, inspiring stories, and practical strategies, including interviews with incredible women who are redefining success on their own terms. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming back to Inspired Mom MDs. Today's conversation is one I think that many of us haven't thought about in this way, but once you hear it, it's hard to unhear or unsee. Dr. Michele Cho Dorado is a pediatric gastroenterologist, a medical director, real estate investor, children's book author, and founder of Prosperous Kids, a platform focused on helping families raise confident, capable, and empowered children through financial literacy. But what stood out to me in getting to know Michele's work is that this really isn't just about money. It's about how kids learn to think and make decisions and handle challenges and ultimately who they become. I'm so excited for my guest today. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that generous introduction. I'm happy to be here.
Let's jump in. I would love to start with your story. What made you realize that financial literacy for kids was something that you wanted to focus on, and how has that maybe evolved over time?
Yeah, I mean, it really stemmed from my own lack of financial education. It was a realization I made much later in life. So basically, I went through all of school. As you know, medical training is very long. And I was about almost a decade into practice, actually, as an attending, near 40, with two little kids, when I realized that I had very little knowledge myself of personal finance. And it just was one of those light bulbs where I kind of stopped and was like, how did I go all these years without ever learning this
Mhm.
stuff? And so, yeah, that just kind of led me down my own journey of personal finance education. And then I ended up learning about investing and real estate investing in particular. And it just kind of unlocked this like wealth of opportunity and just potential and possibility. And once that happened, it's like once certain things are unlocked, you can't put it back, And so it was just one of those things where, my husband and I, we really decided that we were going to be intentional with our own kids. Again, they were very young at the time, but we really made sure that they would learn this stuff much sooner and not reach a point where they're into adulthood, not having learned about financial education. So that's kind of how the journey started. It was really a project. And when I say project, it was my book. I ended up writing a book for my kids just to expose them to these financial concepts in story form, again, because they were so young. And what started out as just a project for my kids to kind of introduce them to this, it became a bigger mission as time went on. And so I'm happy to unpack that or answer any more questions related to that. But yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Wow. So you unlocked one door for yourself, which in turn unlocked all these other doors for your
Yeah.
kids now and their future and wealth
Yeah.
management.
And I think too that, as I have been going down this journey, and especially early on, it's certainly for me understanding personal finance, it felt so empowering. And once you get a handle on that, you feel more confident just not only in managing your financial life, but it gives you confidence in other areas as well. I hate to say that, kids are little mini adults, but all the lessons that I learned going through that process myself, I kept thinking, wow, if I could pass this on to my kids much sooner, personal growth and mindset changes and all these things, I feel like it's all connected. Not that I feel like I know it's all connected. And so that's something that I've really taken to heart that, you know what, it starts with financial education. I want to empower my kids that way and empower, all kids. But once you have a solid foundation in money, I really feel like it unlocks bigger life skills because we had this conversation before, but money's such a huge source of stress and conflict in families. And if you can get a good handle on that and feel confident around money, then imagine in what other areas of your life you can feel confident in. And it goes way beyond money.
So you mentioned that you're teaching your kids several skills and you wrote a book to help explain that. Can you walk us through what that looks like in real life? Like teaching, like choose one skill and just kind of show us what does that mean? How do you teach it to your kids? How do you do it?
Well, so the first book that I had, Reach for the Stars, it was
Hmm.
really just introducing the concepts. My kids were so little at the time, they were infant and toddler age when I thought of the idea. And the thinking was that if they hear the words, they obviously can't have a discussion about what it means to
Hmm.
invest or earn or spend or save on all these things. But if they're at least hearing the words in story form in a way that's fun at bedtime reading, then it's sinking in that they become more familiar with it. So they're more likely to understand it because they become more familiar at an earlier age than if they never heard the word at all. For example, the word investing, for me, it's not a word that was thrown around growing up. And even in my like 30s, I didn't know what it meant to make an investment. And so if you're using those words and it's in a story that you're reading to the kids on a regular basis and they're hearing it, then maybe they'll pick it up and understand what that means much sooner than if they never heard the word at all. But you asked me, what do I do practically at home? So now my kids
Hmm.
are older. They're still young in elementary school, but not an infant and baby anymore. But we just are transparent and just communicate out loud the things that we're doing, the decisions that we're making, the choices that we make when it comes to money. I share that my parents, when we were younger, they shielded us from money, and it was not out of malintention at all. I think it was well intentioned, if anything. I think they just didn't want us to see that it caused stress. They worked very hard, and so they didn't want us to worry about it. Essentially, it was like, focus on school, focus on this or that. We got, we'll handle this. We don't want you to worry about it. And very well intentioned, but the consequence of that was that I never really understood how they made choices, why they might spend on one thing but not another. And even if it didn't make sense to me, I didn't know to ask. And so that's something that my husband and I chose to do differently with our kids is to just talk out loud and so that they can hear how we're making decisions when it comes to different things, how we spend, how we save, how we give, and just have transparency so that they're understanding the reasoning and it's a way for us to pass on our values and transfer values to them.
Oh, I love that. Your story really resonates with how I was brought up. So money was not taboo, but it was just something you didn't discuss with your kids. And
Yeah.
you're right, it was almost like a form of protection. Like
Yeah.
you work on school and becoming your best you, and then we'll handle the money. And
Yeah.
so now I'm hearing you provide a much more transparency, and I'm sure it's age appropriate for,
Yeah.
younger kids, but they're learning that vocabulary. So it's just very comfortable for them. So that's how you're
Yeah.
delivering.
A
I love
story I
it.
like to share is that, we invest in real estate. And when my kids were, I mean, this was a couple years back, but we have short-term rentals and we would just take them with us. And if we were doing any sort of work or rehab or whatever it is, we would just take them with us, put them in the car, and they would see it. And so we
Yeah.
would call it our investment home. And so my 5-year-old would call our home, our STR, the investment home, when are we going to the investment home or what's going on at the investment home? And it was just
Yeah.
funny to me that at 5, he's using that language when,
Yeah.
again, I learned this language at, 30 something.
Yeah. And he knows what an STR is. That's great.
Yeah.
Short-term rental.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's pivot and change directions a bit. In this world where kids are growing up with social media and instant gratification
Yeah.
and constant comparison to other kids or other
Yeah.
kids' families or what they have or maybe don't have, how do some of these skills apply?
Yeah. So I can take a lot of different angles on this. So I think I'll kind of focus on at least two of the things. So one is teaching delayed gratification. And I
Mhm.
think when you're teaching concepts around money, you're learning those things. And so when you're teaching kids how to not spend every dollar that they have, bucket your money, you bucket into saving, into giving, and even talking about investing and teaching those concepts early, I think you're teaching them practically what it means to have delayed gratification because you're not spending it right away. And so that's something that's very intentional that I think takes practice. It's obviously not something that comes natural for kids or even adults, but that's something that I think again, in a world of instant gratification where the dopamine hits are just so gratifying and just all around and abundant, that's something that you can do with them. Just those basic habits, teaching those habits to develop that skill of delayed gratification. So, you know, one of the biggest components I think of teaching kids about being confident in money is that I believe it builds confidence in life. And so, one of my sayings that I really love is that money confidence builds life confidence. And so, I think when you're confident in money, I truly believe that you're more confident in decision making because you're making choices about how to spend, how to give, how to bucket your money. You're building good habits. When you teach concepts of investing, for example, you're teaching how to weigh risks and rewards. And so I think you, over time and with practice, develop better decision making skills. And I think when you're developing all those skills that I mentioned, you become more confident as an individual. And so that's something that my husband and I talk a lot about with our kids is that, again, they're young, but it won't be long before they reach the teenage years. And I think that those couple of years are so, I don't know, scary and tough because they're dealing with so much. And definitely peer pressure is such a big part of it. You hear about the anxious generation and how do you prevent this? And there's only so much you can do to shield your kids. I mean, really, you want them to be confident in themselves so that they don't feel like they have to fall into peer pressure to fit in, right? I think that's the biggest, not worry, but one of the biggest things I want to instill in our kids is that they don't need to do something to fit in because I want them to be comfortable with who they are and feel confident in themselves. And I really believe that as you're teaching them all these skills that I'm talking about, as it relates to money, I think it translates to life. And so that's where I think they overlap.
Mm. Wow, I'm so impressed that teaching kids concepts around money can help them with these life skills, such as confidence and learning delayed gratification. You have such a unique take on this, and that's why I'm so glad you're telling everybody about your perspective. This is
Thank
great.
you.
This is great.
It's not something we're taught really, and I think,
Yeah,
especially like the way it integrates into each other. So I appreciate you giving this platform to speak about this.
I love it. Love it. So I'm thinking about physician families who, in general, to overgeneralize maybe, physician families tend to have more resources.
Mhm.
And they're in a blessed and unique position to have resources. But those families, and me included, don't want to raise kids that feel entitled. And so there's this line we try to find as parents. You want to give them everything, but you don't want to give them too much. And how do you speak to parents to help navigate that balance between those two things?
Again, I grew up with parents who were working very hard. I definitely consider myself a latchkey kid because my parents were always at work. And we weren't poor by any means, but we were not exceptionally well off. And I knew that my parents worked hard to earn money and that I had to be careful about how I spend. In contrast, I do feel that myself and my peers have a lot more resources than we did as children. And so, because of that, whether you feel like you want to make up for like your childhood where maybe, parents couldn't provide for you, so you want to provide everything for your kids, or just we love to provide for our kids. We love seeing them happy and giving them gifts. I think it's a balance, and I think that more than just passing on money to them because that's the easy trap to fall into is, accumulating wealth with this idea of we're going to pass this on to our children and we're going to create generational wealth and we want to set our kids up for success via money. I think the way to reframe that is rather than just passing on money, you want to pass on to them skills and stewardship and allow them to understand what it means to be good stewards of money. Because if you're passing on large amounts of money to them and they're not really having to work for it, then there is a sense of expectancy on their end. And they also don't know how to manage it properly, and money can be squandered. You may have heard that statistic that 90% of wealth in wealthy families is gone by the third generation. And it's because the next generation is not really taught how to steward the money well. And so I think that's something that we think about as well with our kids is just helping them understand that certain things are a privilege and they don't always get it. And I think that's a very important lesson is that you cannot take away from the child their will to work or want to work hard because they know something's coming, like a windfall's coming or an
Mm.
inheritance is coming. They need to know what it means to work hard and kind of build their own future in order to show that they can steward wealth appropriately and keep growing it. And so that's something that I hope that we instill in our kids.
So it is a balance on what to pass along, but your main message is teaching kids from the beginning the key skills on how to manage money, delay gratification, stewardship of money, learning the value of hard work, and that things will not be handed to you.
Yeah.
And when the foundation is set, it's almost like then, okay, then there's a certain portion of my wealth that will be passed on to you, but it'll have a different meaning
Yeah, and that
or
they also
blessing.
they understand how to responsibly manage it and then have
Got
the
it.
intention of growing it, because if you're talking about
Yes.
generational wealth, you're wanting the next generation, to our children, to manage money appropriately and to grow it so that they can then pass it
Hmm.
on to their children, hopefully pass down
Hmm.
the same skills, the same values. And, another key thing is teaching gratitude is so important. Just coming from a place of gratitude where, what we have, we're thankful for. And if you can teach your kids to be grateful for what they have and focus on that, then they're less likely to see what they don't have. And so that's a simple exercise that I do with my kids actually on the way to school every morning. And sometimes they're like, oh, I don't feel like it today, but name at least two things. Sometimes, usually I say three, but if they're in the mood where they don't feel like saying it, I'm like, at least give me two things that we're grateful for today. And I make them do it every morning because I want them to see that no matter how the day started or whatever it may be, there's always something that you can find to be grateful for. And so just being able to focus on that, I think it's really important to teach our kids.
Oh. If there's one mindset shift that you wish every parent could walk away with when it comes to money and their kids, what would that be?
I would say that it's never too early to start. And on the flip side, it's never too late. Because I think obviously my kids are younger and I'm having these discussions and talking about this with young kids. And so at times I hear parents say, oh, well, I've missed the boat. My kids are teenagers or my kids are already in college. But I really believe it's never too late. I mean, I look at myself who learned all of these things at near 40 years of age. And so if I were 20 or 25 or even 30 learning this, I would have been so grateful to have learned this even a decade sooner. So I
Mhm.
think it's never too late. It's just what the time is now. I don't think that you've ever missed the boat. Wherever you are, you start. And I think also physicians have a tendency to feel like they have to master something before they teach it. And that's something that I hope people will also understand is that you can go along the journey with your kids and even sharing mistakes or financial mistakes or things that you may see as a failure. I mean, I think those are good things to share with your kids because I think when kids can see that, hey, my mom and dad aren't perfect either. They make mistakes,
Mhm.
but they turn it around and, they keep going. And one that shows resilience and grit, but also that you learn lessons from mistakes that you make, or, maybe you've lost money on investment. I mean, these are all teachable moments. And so I think that that's really important to share as well.
Yeah. So I love that you say it's never too late, but I also love that you point out that we as parents don't need to be perfect at
Hmm.
managing money before we can start passing along what we
Yeah.
know to our kids.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out too. Yeah. You
Yeah,
don't
of
have to
course.
master it first. Yes. That's a big driver. Yes. I have to know everything before I teach my kids. Michelle, where can people find you if they want to reach out and learn about you and your work?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's getprosperouskids.com. And you can reach me anytime, Michelle at Get Prosperous Kids. I'm on Instagram. Instagram handle is prosperous.kids. And you can find me. I mean, I'm pretty visible on any of those places. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. This was such an eye-opening conversation for me. And I love how you've reframed money. I love your perspective and it almost did like a paradigm shift in my mind.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm so grateful to be here to talk about it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And a shout out to your website. I love your website because it not only is it beautifully constructed, but it has so many tools on it that are free for people who are visiting. So I do want
Yeah.
to give you a shout out because you have books, or you have
Yeah.
tools and practical ways that parents can start these conversations at home. So I do encourage you, if you're listening, check out our website too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Some free guides on there on the website,
Mhm.
question cards that, are for purchase. But yeah, just ways to increase curiosity and make things more engaging and fun and easy for kids. So
Mhm. Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for tuning in today to the Inspired Mom MDs podcast. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with a friend who might benefit too. And I'd be so grateful if you left a review so other women can find me too. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and explore free resources at inspiredmommds.com. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and isn't a substitute for medical advice or care. I'm a board certified physician, but this content isn't connected to my clinical practice, and no doctor patient relationship is formed here. Please always talk to your own health professional about any mental or physical health concerns. And as always, take what helps and leave the rest. See inspiredmommds.com for full disclaimer.